Facade, what do you want?
Defunding the police. What exactly does it mean? I keep hearing it on the news, on the radio, on my screen, but I can't quite work it out. It doesn't make any sense. I thought the police were here for our community's defence. They say crime isn't falling, drugs and violence on the rise, so surely it makes sense for the police to be all eyes. But defunding the police would mean less of them around, less protection of the public, with less crime being clamped down. So why do people think they need less money and not more? The safety of all citizens, isn't that what they ensure?
I understand your questions and I hear your concerns, so perhaps this is a topic that together we could learn to better understand if police really are the best solution and if everything deemed criminal should end in prosecution. While I agree we haven't seen significantly lower rates of crime, this is despite increasing powers of policing all the time. The prison population has doubled in the past 30 years, but what this has done for public safety really isn't clear. Police aren't having the effect initially intended, which is why there is confusion that their powers be extended. But it isn't only that their tactics aren't really working, it's the fact that there's communities they're particularly hurting, disproportionately targeting groups facing oppression. Minorities are the ones dealing with police aggression. Under police custody, vulnerable people continue to be killed. Through excessive restraint, force and neglect, trust is unlikely to rebuild. So perhaps for you, the police have always been there, but you have to appreciate their treatment isn't always fair. This is why there are calls to defund police institutions, acknowledging in their place may be better substitutions.
Okay, I hear what you're saying and agree that for me, the police have always been what I needed them to be. I have always felt safe, my protection in their hands. I hadn't really thought this isn't always how it stands. I accept that this is probably because of the way I look. I wouldn't be misidentified as a criminal or a crook, but I'm still confused with what defunding would actually do. Where would that money go? How would it be split and to who?
Well, the term defunding the police encompasses quite a bit. Different people may mean different things when they speak about it. But overall, what they want is less money being invested and to consider other solutions than just getting people arrested. Crime prevention and social well-being goes hand in hand. So instead of a focus on policing, other solutions should expand. Supporting mental health youth services, housing and reducing poverty may be better ways to reduce crime, their input a necessity. We really need new ways to deal with those deemed criminal, yet money for these alternative methods is often minimal. Those from communities affected will have inside perspective, understanding how to work together in ways that are often more effective. Police are not always trained to deal with the complex cases. A nuanced and multidisciplinary approach may help cover all bases.
I get how other organisations may be better equipped to deal with complex scenarios like mental health and drug addicts. The police have a tough job. We can't expect them to do it all, so perhaps sharing responsibility would allow crime to fall. Prevention over punishment seems like a good thing. Different approaches for different problems. New solutions they may bring. But stopping whoever's committing crimes, that's what police are supposed to do. You said they target people unfairly. Are you sure that's really true? And why only now? Why do I keep hearing about this? I'm seeing defund the police everywhere. Is there something that I've missed?
I can answer both your questions by exploring the here and now, but also going back to why policing started and how. It's in the mainstream mind after the murder of George Floyd. Police are killing black people in America, with many lives already destroyed. Black Lives Matter protests shouted the phrase far and wide, extending the conversation beyond the US. Britain could no longer hide. You see, racism is a policing problem on a wider scale, but this racism is hidden inside policies, arrests and jail. There are disproportionate rates of minoritized ethnic people paying the price. Stop and searches, arrests, prison and death at a rate of more than twice. But I'm not trying to say that police always intend this persecution, but they internalise problematic behaviour core to their institution. You see, policing in Britain has its roots in colonial times, with focus on controlling the racialised other, not on actual crimes. In a post-colonial era, similar police tactics can be seen. With bias, conscious or not, targeting the other is often routine. Despite inquiries and reports, the situation appears to be getting worse. Structural racism denied or dismissed, with many in the force averse. Police may not be held accountable, and instead given yet more power. Operating as arms of the state, control and surveillance go up by the hour.
I didn't realise that so many people were affected, or that the police and colonialism were so deeply connected. I thought funding should be put into ensuring better representation, tackling stereotypes, boosting diversity, and uniting the nation. But I appreciate that this hasn't always been effective. Without acknowledgement or interest, these schemes aren't corrective. I can see now that there are quite a few critiques of the police, but I still just can't imagine how their work would ever cease. Could you give me an example? Tell me in which area this could be done? I want to know how defunding the police could work if the fight was won.
An example that highlights this well is the issue around drugs, how users are handled and often thought of as delinquents or thugs. Those suffering with addiction have their behaviour criminalised, while deaths from overdose are continually on the rise. Instead of health care, users are often met with policing, so addictions are hidden in fear, with stigma around use increasing. Police just aren't the best people to deal with issues of substance abuse. With specialist services available, there really isn't an excuse. The war on drugs doesn't even lower usage and instead causes more harm. Avoidable deaths, violence and jail time, but no one raising much alarm. People racialised as black are far more likely to be affected by this. With higher rates of searches, arrests and convictions, this cannot be dismissed. Drug laws are ways that communities of colour and the poor are criminalised. They make racial profiling, discrimination and violence appear justified. We need to move beyond the binary that drug users are inherently bad and that policing a public health problem is the only option we had. Funding programs that work with drug users really may be key, giving insight into how best we can make harm reduction a reality, but also acknowledging that addiction may come from a lack of social bonds. Investing in housing, employment and education are critical ways to respond. If more money went on connecting people to themselves and to those around, less would need to be spent on drug enforcement and police on the ground. Decriminalisation may be necessary, making drug possession and use not a crime. This would mean in crisis, police aren't the first responders every time. Meeting people where they are, instead of criminalising and blaming. For social and racial justice, the problem of drugs needs reframing. Defunding the police accepts that current responses are defective. Drug policy shouldn't be drug policing in order to be protective.